Just imagine a group of individuals or a community, a country or even a continent of people all living and working to their potential. What would that look like? What could they achieve? I'm from London in England. My parents moved there in the 60s from Jamaica. They arrived, and when they arrived, they were young and naive and really not understanding the environment that they were in at the time, which was cold, and it was often very hostile to immigrants at the time. So I, myself, just like my 8 siblings, grew a tough exterior. It was tough, right? You had to be. Yeah. So I remember the time in London being in school, and I was in school and I was hanging around with a group of guys, like us guys do, up to no good at all. And a teacher saw us, and this guy is a great guy. I'm absolutely certain that he could see the path ahead of us, and he knew that we were really not heading anywhere good at all without some direction. So what he did was he approached us, and he turned slightly away. Now he started talking, not to us, but about us. You know, I really should ask them, but it's not. It's going to be too difficult for them. They won't be able to do it. They just won't be able to do it. I'm stood over here. Excuse me, what? What do you mean too difficult? What are you talking about? Oh, John, don't worry. It's a sport. It's a bit hard. You won't be able to do it. It's going to be a bit tricky. Don't worry. Hey, listen. I was in the football team, I was in the rugby team, and I was tough. What do you mean I couldn't do it? Of course I can do this. What is it, by the way? It's called kayaking. But are you sure you want to try it? Yeah, I'll do that. It'll be dead easy. This is what I said. How did that work out for me? About 2 weeks later, I tried it. I got into my kayak, which was a bit wobbly, okay? I pushed slowly away from the side, picked up my paddles, and I started to paddle, which was okay, right? And within about 60 seconds, I'd capsized. I got stuck upside down. Now, I saw the safety video. It was very easy on the safety video. What happens is you capsize, you do a forward roll, and you pop out, and you got a life jacket, and you're fine, right? It wasn't like that. I capsized. My leg got caught. I started to do this, and then I was spluttering and swallowing water, and I was going, help! I'm going to drown! The instructor saw me, and he was just going, he knew there was no fear of me drowning. Now, recap. 6'2", tough. But at that moment, I felt about that big. Now, you need to understand, it was pride that got me there in the first place. And it was pride that meant I was going to keep coming back until I got good at this sport. I was not happy about being laughed at all. I remember it well. This is a long time ago. It was a Wednesday. Every Wednesday, week after week after week after month, I kept coming back until I got better at this, and I did. I started to get better. And as I would normally do, I'd turn up on Wednesdays, I'd get into my kayak, I was a bit better at the time, and then I would paddle from one side of the loch to the next. Then I would slow down and turn around slowly, because I hadn't learned how to turn at the time, right? Slowly. And then I would paddle on the next side, and I would do. Now, on one Wednesday, an instructor visited from another club. And, he relayed this to me afterwards, a great friend of mine. He did this. Who's that? The other instructor said, that's just John. What is he doing? No idea. He comes every week. We just ignore him. Anyway, So this guy comes down to the jetty and calls me over. So I come to see this guy, right? And he says to me, "Are you up for a challenge?" Yeah! What else was I going to say? And what he did, this was flat water, right? He started talking to me about this. Now, this is white water. What you see is a river, a rugged river cut into the landscape. You see small waves and huge waves up here. You see rocks and strong currents. There are obstacles, some which are above the surface and seen, and some which are beneath the surface and unseen. Within this environment, with all these strong currents, they have the potential to push you off track, to literally flip you upside down or do damage to anything within that environment. Now, using this as a backdrop, there's a sport, and it's called slalom. And it kind of goes like this. Across this river, you have lines, and from the lines, they suspend poles, which are about 1 meter apart, and you paddle your kayak down through the first one, and then down through the next one, and then maybe you go up through the next. You see, it's a preset course, and the object of the sport, or the purpose of the sport, is to get from the top to the bottom through the preset course as quickly as possible. Up for a challenge? Yeah. White water? Yeah. Now, it's a secret. I'm sure you guys won't tell anybody this, but I couldn't actually swim very well at the time. Number one. And number two, I was actually terrified of water. Okay. Yeah. So it was pride that got me there, and pride was just going to keep me going. So I kept paddling. I had more structure to what I was doing, and I improved. And I paddled, and I paddled, and I paddled. Just under a year later, it was the first time I competed for the country. I actually got reasonably good. I was just about 14 at the time. And I remember it was so tough at the time because I'd go to school, you finish your classes, you pack your rucksack, and then you'd run home. I didn't live that close to school, so it was actually quite a long run. You go in, hi mum, hi dad, bye mum, bye dad. You pick your bag up, you run straight out, and then you run to the train station. And then I'd get on the train, and then I'd travel just a little bit outside of London, and then go to the club, get my kayak, put it down, get in my kayak to train. Now, in the winter months, by the time I had traveled and I arrived in my training spot, it was dark. And quite often I was on my own. And we used to paddle. Quite often I'd paddle on the Thames upstream against the current, against the flow. And you'd paddle. And when you paddled, you had two key objectives: working on the technical application of your stroke, pull, but also you work in your fitness. And it was hard. At the time, we used to say that you would paddle and you would train hard. You would train so hard that you couldn't train any harder. You would push yourself and push yourself right to the limit. And when you got to the limit that you couldn't go any further, you would push a little bit more. So this is where I felt pain. But on reflection, the physical pain that I was feeling was nothing in comparison to the emotional pain that I was going through. Let me explain. At the time, my parents were splitting up, and I was really struggling. It was awful. You see, I was old enough to understand what was happening, but not old enough to be listened to be heard, to be taken seriously. And by paddling, it gave me an opportunity to get out the house, away from the arguments. It gave me an opportunity just to get out the whole area, the whole neighbourhood. The neighbourhood at the time, I could see the signs everywhere, the negative influences. I could see the formations of the gangs, and then there was the fighting, and there's so much stuff going on which really threatened just to pull you in. So I would get my rucksack, and I would run and get on the train and leave and paddle. And in truth, when I reflect now, the physical pain was really a welcome relief to what was happening emotionally at the time. But I got good. I kept going. And you know, the sport is absolutely amazing. So across the backdrop I mentioned of the river. Now, if you imagine you've got this course, so you'll have a gate. The first gate will be gate number 1. You paddle down through the first one. Then you'll have to work out your line or your route through the waves. Maybe you go above a rock or beneath the rock, and then you go down through the next one. And then there's a next gate where maybe it's an upstream. So when you do this, you have to really study your line. And how you do that is you go to the environment. You'll be on the left bank, and you'd get low, and you'd look, and you'd observe. You'd look at the water. You could spend minutes or even hours just seeking to learn. You go to the right bank. You look upstream, and you look downstream. You're seeking to learn your line. And I improved, and I kept going, and I had a reasonable career as an athlete, and over time I began to coach, and I ended up being an elite coach. And I remember very well, it was some years ago now, it was the Great Britain trials, and I was in Scotland, and I was coaching an elite athlete, absolutely awesome guy, and we looked at the river from every single angle. And he learnt his line, and I was clear that he understood that line. But there was something just not quite right. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to convey to him the level of precision that he needed to be successful in that particular race, and ultimately to gain a place in the British team. So what I said to him is, I want you to imagine that there is cotton, some thread, which is stretching from the very top of this river, hundreds of yards down that line through all the gates that we have just determined. And what I want you to do is to imagine that you're in your kayak, and as you paddle, that thread is down the center of your kayak. And as you're paddling, if you deviate from that central line, you need to recognize it quickly, and you need to correct yourself. Now, we stood there, we talked, he looked, he thought, and then what he did, which is often the case, is he came away from the river, and he found a quiet spot. He visualized himself in his kayak, and he paddled, making every single turn, every single application of the stroke that we had discussed. Now, I stood here, and I watched him, and I was with him right throughout. Now, I just want to be really clear. There's a group of you maybe thinking, actually, that may be quite difficult. It's not difficult. It is not difficult. I want to be really clear. It is impossible, all right? I want to be really clear. Why do we do it? You see, the ultimate line is a guide. It is a target for you to come back to. It is about understanding the route that you take through this white water with all of its perils and all of the strong currents, with all the obstacles, some which are seen and some which are unseen. That's what it's about. Fundamentally, every decision that we take is based on the fundamental understanding of the ultimate line. And let me tell you, some of the best athletes in the world, when they race that ultimate line, and when they deviate from it, And they do. They make the quickest, the most minute adjustments that to the untrained eye, you would never, ever know that they ever made a fault, but they do. It was great, went really well. So I coached my athlete. It was brilliant. He won the race. He got selected. You see, paddling the ultimate line often ends up in success, and success in sport could mean being selected to your national team. It could mean winning a gold medal in the Europeans, in the Worlds, or even the Olympics. But we all strive for success. Maybe not in sport, maybe just in life in general, in our relationships, in our jobs. What is our ultimate line? What is the guide that we come back to? When we deviate, that we know that we need to correct back to. What is that guide around the big obstacles and the waves and the ripples that life often brings? So many decisions that we have to make in life. Now, in some ways it's really easy because you link your decision back to your identity. So I'm an athlete, or I'm a parent, or maybe I'm single or I'm married, but things change over time. And athletes, well, over time they retire. Parents of small kids, the kids grow up and they leave home. What happens then? Single people get married, and sometimes marriages don't work out and people get divorced. I had a key decision to make, and you need to remember that I had many, many years of solitude and quiet. And although many of you won't believe this, it's true, at my center, I'm an introvert. And I tend to hide from crowds. And I had a key decision to make just a little while ago. And it was this. Do the TED Talk or run and hide? Now, at the end of the day, let me tell you this. When I look at the level of focus, the level of precision that people in sport take to understand their ultimate line, it really is mind-blowing. It is absolutely awesome. I coached in the London Olympics, the 2012 Olympics, and shortly around the time of the Olympics, it was decided that the same site will be used for selections for the Rio Olympics. And people traveled to that site, moved their families many years before, just so that they could study that environment and understand it. Understanding the ultimate line in kayak is based on two fundamental principles. Number one, you understand the environment, its challenges, its opportunities. And number two, you understand purpose, your place in that environment, the rules of the game or the sport. Now, I believe that without a fundamental understanding of the environment in which we live and our purpose, we just risk drifting through life, and we risk being knocked one way or the next by life's waves, being sucked in by currents that threaten to rock our boat or literally just flip us upside down. From pride to pain, over time, and with love and support of others, I found purpose. And my purpose was found in my faith as a Christian. And through my faith as a Christian, I found my identity in Christ, which gave me my ultimate line. I believe that if we would only just stop and just take some time, just a little bit of time, to recognize our purpose in this world. And through that, we will seek out and inquire as to our environment in which we live, its opportunities and its challenges. And through that, if we would plan, if we would pursue and live to the best of our abilities our ultimate line, we will exceed our expectations. And ultimately, we will achieve success, a success which is far greater than we ever imagined. And we will see the very ripples of our life extend far beyond ourselves and far beyond these present times. Thank you.